Coming up next on Tech News Weekly, it's me, Jason Howell, and we've got 4 interviews for you today. So jam-packed show, starting with Geoffrey Fowler from the Washington Post, who talks about the lifespan of technology and why it kind of seems like it's getting shorter for all these gadgets that we're buying. Also, DwangoAC, aka my friend Allan, talks about TASBot and how it owned the Nintendo 64 game Ocarina of Time at Summer Games Done Quick just a month ago. Max Cherney from Protocol talks all about the CHIPS Act and how it might be impacting chip exports from China. And finally, Phil Nickinson from Digital Trends compares the Apple AirPods Pro to the new Pixel Buds Pro. 2 enter, 1 wins. Up next on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 246, recorded Thursday, August 4th, 2022. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Hover. Whether you're a developer, photographer, or small business, Hover has something for you to expand your projects and get the visibility you want. Go to hover.com/twit to get 10% off your first purchase of any domain extension for the entire first year. And by IT Pro TV. Are you looking to break into the world of IT? Well, get the introduction you need with IT Pro TV. Visit itpro.tv/TNW for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription when you use code TNW30 at checkout. And by ExpressVPN. Secure your family's online activity and unlock tons of new shows by visiting expressvpn.com/TNW. Take back your online privacy today and use our link to get 3 extra months free with a 1-year package. Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly. This is the show where we talk to people who are making and breaking the tech news each and every week. I am one of your hosts, Jason Howell. The other host, Micah Sargent, is off today. We will see Micah again next week. But you know what that usually means. Usually that ends up meaning we have tons of interviews, right? And that is the case today. We've got 4 interviews for you, so you're not going to want to miss any one of them. Let's jump in. When, we're talking about technology and the gadgets that we love and everything, I think one thing that I've noticed over the years is that they obviously have a shelf life. They have like an end of life date, whether we want that to be the case or not. It's easy to buy technology and think this is going to last forever. And I think that there was a time where that was the case. But now, for whatever reason, and we're going to talk about those reasons, it seems like the technology that we buy is great for a while, and then it starts to kind of deteriorate, and then, potentially, and unfortunately, it gets to a point to where it's just not working nearly as well as it used to, and it might just be ready for the trash. Joining us to talk about this is Geoffrey Fowler, who wrote about this for the Washington Post, and also happens to offer some suggestions on how we can do better with this. Welcome back to the show, Geoffrey.
Hello, hello.
It's good to have you here. Thanks for taking time to talk to us about this, because it's not just about like the enjoyment of us using our tech gadgets. I mean, that's part of it. We're all technology fans. So it feels great when we buy something we love and it lasts forever and we continue to get that enjoyment. It's also about the planet and not contributing e-waste, which is something that is really top of mind, especially now for folks. And you do a great job in your piece of kind of highlighting this ticking time bomb that is the lifespan of technology. Tell us a little bit about that to set the stage.
Yeah, so I went on a journey. I have a lot of gadgets, like a lot of our viewers and listeners do, and I gathered them into a pile, and I tried to figure out when they're all going to die. Because the dirty little secret of the tech industry is that almost everything that we buy these days has some kind of rechargeable lithium battery built into it. Yeah. And lithium batteries are consumable products. They're like the ink in printers. They're like the tires on cars. They are, by definition, going to wear out eventually. So when these products are made, the manufacturers plan for when they're going to die. They have to make choices. And they're looking for a number that's called the cycle count, which is how many times can the battery be totally recharged from 0 to 100 before the battery gets depleted. And I wanted to know what that number was in my devices. And it won't probably surprise you too much. Turns out a lot of manufacturers don't want to tell us. They don't want to tell us how long these batteries are going to live, or even what are our options when the battery does die. How can we replace it? Can we replace it at all? Or do we just have to throw it away?
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, because they don't know any different, because there's no truly like obvious solution, is, oh, this no longer does the thing. Like you point out in the beginning of your article, AirPods. And that immediately, like, I don't have Apple AirPods, but I've had plenty of true wireless earbuds. And they all kind of do this eventually. And I don't know if that's the size of the battery inside, or the fact that, you know, it comes with a rechargeable case, so we're constantly plopping them in there, so that cycle count gets higher. What are your thoughts as far as that's concerned? Does it matter if a battery is larger versus smaller, or we're charging it every single day versus sporadically?
Yeah, I mean, definitely batteries will have different tolerances for all kinds of things. The number of times you can recharge them, having to go up to 100, or even the temperatures that you use them at. But the AirPods are a really good example, and I think we should dig into it. So I have a pair, or I had a pair, and they only lasted me about 2 years before the battery started creeping down so that I couldn't really keep it going for more than a short burst at a time. And so I brought the AirPods to the Apple store and I said, hey, these batteries don't work anymore. I'd like to replace the battery in them. And the Apple store said, we can't do that. All they would do is sell me new ones. And I wanted to know, well, why can't you replace the battery in it? And the answer is because the way it was designed. Those batteries in those things are sealed inside with so much glue that it literally would take a neurosurgeon to be able to like melt out the glue and pick it out and pull it out. And thus, from the beginning, Apple designed these things to be trash. But it turns out a lot of headphones and a lot of other products are designed the same way, that the batteries are either totally glued in or soldered in. Another really good example of this kind of product is the toothbrush, the electric toothbrush. So Philips, has made hundreds of millions of these things, and those batteries are literally soldered inside. So that, in fact, if you ever look at the instruction manual for Philips, which I did in reporting this column, it actually says if you just want to throw away your toothbrush when you're done with it, actually you can't even do that. You have to take a hammer to it, whack the back of it, and then use another device to kind of scoop out the battery because it's, again, soldered inside, take that out, and then you can properly dispose or recycle of it. So it's just a nutty way to be building products that doesn't really work for consumers and also doesn't work for the environment.
No. And also, I mean, talking about the toothbrush example, like, I bet if you asked 1,000 people, 1,000 owners of that toothbrush, whether they knew that that's what you're supposed to do at the end of its life cycle, I bet you maybe one or two would even say like, oh yeah, that's totally what you do. No one else knows, because this isn't something that, like you point out in the article, this isn't something, the kind of thing that manufacturers really go out of their way to talk about, because it is kind of a dirty little secret. Like, the battery is, in some ways, it's amazing what it empowers in these technologies, and we've come to rely on them, but it's also its Achilles heel. It's whether it's designed to be or not, it is the thing that leads to that obsolescence.
Yeah. And I think that, and I'm going to include myself in this, we need to chide technology journalists and reviewers, and I have been part of the problem, that we're not demanding to get this information from companies. Like, when they come out with a new widget, we get lots of other specs. We get the speed, we get all these other sorts of things, but they're not, for the most part, with a couple of exceptions, they're not disclosing these cycle counts. They're not disclosing this built-in death date. And I think we should now consider that basic consumer product information. And so that's one of the things I tried to do in my piece in the Post, was I just went through 14 of these devices that are on my desk and just tried to get the companies to tell me, okay, but how many times can you charge the battery? And some of them, I mean, my Lord, I had to go around for more than a month in circles with them, because again, the marketing people get stuck with me rather than the engineers.
Right.
And they just don't want to admit it because they don't want us to think about anything other than, oh, how they made it sexy by making it super thin, or how they made it like so sealed in and waterproof that you could go swimming with it. They don't want us to think about or know the costs of that to us as a consumer and to the environment.
So then is it safe to say that with technology like this, and by like this, I mean like nearly all technology that's created for consumer use these days, everything has a battery built into it. Is it safe to say from your estimation and from your research and talking with companies and everything, that they've all done some sort of looking into the amount of cycles that a piece of technology can probably be expected to live to? So in other words, a company should have at least some sort of estimation as far as how long this device could last for, given a person's like average charging behavior?
Yeah, 100%. So I spoke with engineers and people who teach engineers at universities, and they said, look, all gadget companies are dealing with the exact same problem and the exact same marketplace. They're going and buying these batteries from companies, right? And when you buy a battery and when you build it into a device, you're tuning it. And the choices you're making are around that cycle count. You can make the battery have more cycles, or you can make the battery have more charge per cycle, but you have to make a choice. So they're making those choices there. But also these companies know even more than that. They know when products die because so many of these are connected to the internet. They literally have a database of the last day, the first day and the last day that these devices connect to the internet. So they know how long they're lasting. And again, they plan around this. This is how you develop technology. So they just don't want to talk about it. And, we don't have any laws in the US that would force them to, even though Europe is, as they've been leading in some other areas, is starting to get a little more aggressive on this front.
Yeah. And really, it seems to me that there are certain product types that would be easier to plan around this with. I'm thinking of smartphones, right? Like we had, when Android phones first started coming out, because I don't believe that iPhone ever had a removable battery, like an easy, like user removable battery model on the iPhone. But when Android phones first came out, my first Android device was a Motorola Droid. And that was one of my favorite things about it. I could remove that battery, replace it with a new one. That would extend its life. But then at some point, that kind of turned into this unibody design. Everything's fixed and placed inside. Maybe you can replace the battery, but you got to get a professional to do it, or you risk, damaging your device. Versus what you were talking about at the beginning of your article, these tiny little earbuds that, like, how do you even design something that small to make it easily manageable in the same way that a larger smartphone can be designed that way?
Sure. Well, we were talking about when did it change? I think it changed with this. Remember this guy? Back when this came out in the iPod in 2001, 2002, this was one of the first portable consumer electronics that had a sealed-in battery. And you may remember it was a huge issue for people that these things died after 18 months. And there wasn't an inexpensive and good way to replace the battery. It was completely different from the Walkman and that. But unfortunately, Apple took the wrong lesson from that, because they did that. And you know how we responded as consumers? We just bought new iPods and we put our old iPods into a drawer. I'm guilty of this as well. I just showed you. I still have my iPod in the drawer next to me from 20 years ago. So they took the wrong lesson, and then Apple did the same thing in the iPhone, and then eventually, other smartphone makers copied Apple as well. But again, it doesn't have to be this way. I remember the Samsung Galaxy S5. You remember this one from 2014?
Yeah.
It both had a removable battery and was waterproof. It had a little back you could peel off of it. So it is possible to build these things so that you can do both. In terms of the totally wireless earbuds, again, so Apple chose to glue all this stuff in a way that you can't really remove it. But Samsung makes competitors called the Galaxy Buds, and it still takes a little bit of doing, but you can actually pop those things open, get to the battery, replace it, and put in a new one. So Samsung was able to make the batteries removable. Why can't Apple?
Nice example. Love that. Okay, great. So it is possible even on these really small form factors. All right, final question. What are the ways that we can kind of improve this? As a user, we're kind of locked in to a certain degree into the choices that the manufacturers are making on these devices. But how can users kind of slow down that impending death day on their devices? Do you have any suggestions around that?
Well, first of all, I think we, the users, should be demanding better from these companies. We need to embarrass them into coming clean about when their death dates are, so that they start competing with each other on making longer lasting products. I think we can do that by all getting on social media. And when our stuff dies, let's complain about it. Let's let them hear that we're not okay with them, designing essentially trash that we can't do anything about. So first of all, we need to have our voices heard on that. We should also have our voices heard about laws that are being considered. Things like right to repair laws that we've been talking about in the U.S. and in Europe. They're thinking about laws that would require companies to actually design batteries that have to be removed. Design devices in a way that batteries can be removed always. And that would be the rule there. As individual consumers, a couple of things. Well, first of all, if you have an older device that you're going to upgrade, don't just stick it in a drawer. Sell it. Find a second use for it, because that is the best thing you can do for the environment and for your own bottom line, because somebody out there might be able to figure out or have the time to get in there, peel out that battery and, get it having a second life. So that's really important. I think as consumers, we also have to really kind of look into our souls a little bit. And look, I love new gadgets as much as anybody else watching the show right now, but we have to really challenge, are we being kind of like bamboozled by the marketing of these companies into thinking that there is always a reason to upgrade, that we really do need the version 15 when we have version 13? Like, is it really good enough? Because I think we've really, tech marketing in a lot of ways for a lot of these very mature products now has become kind of ludicrous in terms of taking really very small improvements and trying to make them sound big.
Yeah, we've certainly slid very far in that direction of these devices just collecting dust and accumulating and moving on to the next thing, bigger, better, faster. And really in hindsight, a lot of the technology that we probably have, that I have in this drawer that I'm knocking on right here, is probably just good enough. But yet there's that drive, that consumer drive that we've built up over time to always feel like we need the latest and greatest thing. I love your writing. I love the directions that you go with your writing. So it's always a pleasure getting you on. Geoffrey Fowler, of course, writes for the Washington Post. And if people want to follow you online, where can they find you, Geoffrey?
I'm at Geoffrey Fowler, and we're on the Washington Post. We have a section called Help Desk where we tackle lots of the consumer tech challenges and problems.
Right on. Thank you so much for carving out time for us today. Appreciate it, Geoffrey.
You bet.
All right. Take care. All right. Coming up, actually, my friend, neighbor, he lives just a couple blocks away, Allan Cecil, joins to talk about how his team used his TASBot to do some pretty incredible things on the Nintendo 64, specifically on the Ocarina of Time. Really cool stuff. That's coming up next. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Hover. It's time to make plans and let Hover help you achieve them. If you happen to be a blogger, if you're creating a portfolio, building an online store, maybe you just want to make a more memorable redirect to your LinkedIn page. That's a great thing, great direction to go. Well, Hover has the best domain names and email addresses just for you. Email at your domain name. As you probably already know, it's key to connecting with customers and, more importantly, for building trust about your brand. And they have domain-based emails for all your needs, small or large. And it's just really easy to set up. You can add as many mailboxes to your domain as you need. When your domain actually renews, your mailboxes are going to renew as well. Excellent prices. Their most popular mailbox is a no-brainer solution for business owners, and you can access that from anywhere. So you can use the email app you're already comfortable with. If apps don't happen to be your thing, well, they have webmail that you can access wherever you happen to be. What can I say? I love Hover. I've used Hover so many times for so many different domains, and part of the reason why is because it's so dang easy. You go to the interface, you plug in what you want. It gives you all of these different combinations of different options. So I could put in JSON there and then see, like, what are my JSON? JSON.tech? Well, that's probably taken. But it gives you kind of permutations around that, like I am JSON.tech, and just gives you a lot of ideas that maybe you hadn't thought about before. It's one of the many reasons that I love Hover's online experience. And Hover isn't actually here to upsell you on stuff you don't need either. They just want to help. They have pro-level tools. They have powerful domain and email management tools. They're intuitive. They're easy to use, whether you're a web pro or if you happen to just be getting started. are also private and secure. So there's WHOIS privacy protection included with your domain purchase. So that keeps your private information private, exactly as it sounds. It's a great way to reduce spam and protect yourself from unwanted solicitations. And then, of course, Hover Connect lets you pick the service that you want to use to build and host your website. Connect actually helps you start using your domain name with just a couple of clicks. At Hover, you are a customer. You're not a source of data. So you can take back control of your data with reliable tracker-free email. And Hover is trusted by hundreds of thousands of customers, including myself, who use their domain names and email to turn their ideas into a reality. Whether you're a developer, photographer, or small business, Hover has something for you to expand your projects and get the visibility you want. Go to hover.com/twit, and you can get 10% off your first purchase of any domain extension for the entire first year. That's hover.com/twit. You'll get 10% off your domain extension for a full year. Hover is awesome, and I love having them on this show because I'm a very proud user of Hover. We thank Hover for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right, so let's take a trip back in time. Do you remember 1998? That was the release year of the classic Nintendo 64 game, Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time. If you thought you've seen everything from that game, well, think again. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about what you might not have seen. Our guest has a background in putting his TASBot creation, that's the tool-assisted speedrun robot, to work on games like this, to open up and create new and unseen secrets hiding within the game and maybe beyond that as well. Allan Cecil showed off these accomplishments at this year's Awesome Games Done Quick, and he's done that many times before. Welcome back to the show, Allan.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I go by DwangoAC online, so if you're confused about the name, that's why.
Sorry, I see. You're also my friend, so I know you outside of TASBot stuff. So there you go.
Yes.
Thank you for pointing that out. So first of all, set the stage.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I also am Allan Cecil when I'm presenting as part of Bishop Fox, which is my actual employer. So the two identities do tend to merge. It happens.
Okay. All right. For a second, I was like, oh, no, maybe I shouldn't have called him by his full name.
It's okay.
So first of all, set the stage a little bit. Talk about the TASBot setup that's driving this experience. I'm assuming it's very similar in many ways to the TASBot that you've used, on other consoles. This isn't the first time you've used this on the Nintendo 64, but for people who are unfamiliar with it, what is it?
So TASBot here is my little companion. This was built by a team of folks here. You can see that we have a brand new form for him. He is very pretty and very svelte. This is our mascot, and we use him to play video games perfectly at Games Done Quick and other charity events. So think of it like a player piano. You have someone who composed a song in advance. That then gets put on paper roll. That paper roll is then sent through a player piano, and it plays a song from start to finish. What we're doing with TASBot is taking a tool-assisted speedrun, often coming from a place like taskvideos.org. We're then preparing that movie file, or that series of button presses, and we're having TASBot play it back on an original console just by plugging into the controller ports. So that's kind of what's going on here. The charity part is a little bit more interesting.
So tell me a little bit about that, and by the way, I'm smiling because I saw TASBot's eyes light up as if it knows we're talking about it. But tell us a little bit about the charity side of things.
So these are often done at places like Games Done Quick. You can go to gamesdonequick.com and see their particular charity focus. They are really the founders of the concept of these types of speedrun events. It's one person after another playing a video game as fast as they possibly can. While viewers at home are watching on Twitch, usually they're able to watch for free, but they can donate for various incentives, whether that's having a player play with a blindfold on, having them play with only one hand on the controller. There's a lot of interesting things that you can see at these Games Done Quick events. The most recent Games Done Quick event was held in Minnesota just a few weeks ago and helped raise over $3 million for Doctors Without Borders just from people donating for incentives and various prizes.
Nice. That is so cool. I love that you're doing that. And what a gift and an accomplishment to be able to take something that you are passionate about and then be able to impact change essentially, and be able to bring value to places of the world that need it. So tell us a little bit about what you showed off, because this is a big deal. People are reacting pretty strongly to some of this stuff. It all kind of hinges around this idea of arbitrary code execution, and as you mentioned, kind of putting this data through the controller ports. What exactly is arbitrary code execution, and how are you using it here? How far are you pushing it?
Okay, so there's a couple of things that we can do. Normally, in a tool-assisted speedrun, you're just playing the game perfectly. You're just trying to play from the start of the game to the end as fast as you possibly can. But when you have the ability to use an emulator ahead of time, you can find glitches. And this is where my day job comes into play. I'm a security consultant with Bishop Fox. My job is to find exploits, vulnerabilities, glitches, and take advantage of them. We do the same thing to video games. So classically, we had done this in the past for Super Mario Bros. 3. We found a glitch that allowed us to gain control of the game and then the console, and we added custom content where we had a different message at the end. We had different effects that Mario was able to have that would not normally have been in the game. All kinds of things are possible. And the thing about arbitrary code execution is it means it really is arbitrary. Once we gain access to take over the console, we could completely stop the game and play something different, or we can augment it, which is more what we did here.
Yeah, you made a lot of creations within. I'm fascinated by this idea of like discovering glitches and everything. I think that's a whole other topic, but that's obviously what you do for a living and everything. But I'm very interested in how you even find those to begin with. But let's go down the road of these kind of cool creations that you were able to do as a result of this. And by the way, I should also point out there is the full event is streamed. You can find it on YouTube. I think it's like an hour long, and it's a lot of fun to watch along. There is also kind of a cut down, kind of like a highlights reel that can be found there as well. So a lot of these things that were created, discovered, whatever, are all presented there for people to watch. What's the one creation that you were most proud of, that you were most delighted by?
Well, let's quickly get to how we did the creation. So in this particular game, we weren't able to use a tool-assisted speedrun from start to finish. We needed a human runner in the form of Save State. They are a fantastic speedrunner of Ocarina of Time. We needed them to be able to play the game, as you just saw on screen, to get through the rupee route and various other things. Because of how the Nintendo 64 pulls the controllers, we don't get consistent behavior. So Save State played the game themselves. We used an arbitrary code execution glitch that we call it in the community, we call it stale reference manipulation. But in the traditional sense, it would be a use after free exploit. That allowed us to take Link's angle of where he was facing, along with the angle of where a rock, an object that happened to be stored, was. That's kind of a not exactly the right way to phrase it. I'm glossing over a lot of details, but basically we're picking up this rock that you see right here, and that object will point to a different object in memory after we do a series of glitches. That allows us to jump to the controller ports as the code to execute. And the tricky thing here that is different than most other content we've done in the past, we briefly had TASBot connected to all 4 controller ports, but then we disconnected controller port 1 and handed control back to Save State, who continued to play while TASBot wrote custom content directly into the expansion memory pack. So cool. That allowed us to create entirely new scenes. So your question was, what was I happiest about being able to create? I was just happy we were able to create anything in the first place at all, because the process of doing it was really incredible. But really answering your question, I don't want to spoil the ending if you haven't seen this. So I think I will just pick one thing. We used the ability to connect over the controller ports to allow people to connect by Twitch chat. So they were typing in Twitch chat and they were able to type a specific message of "here together." I'll at least spoil that part. That one was the pivotal moment that made everyone cry, because we had gone through this pandemic of 2.5 years and not being able to connect with anyone. Summer Games Done Quick 2022 was the first in-person event where we could be together with Doctors Without Borders representatives there on site, 1,500 people, all masked, all very safe. But we were able to come together, at least for us. But there were still 150,000 people or some odd watching online that couldn't participate in person. And this gave them an opportunity to type here together and see their message appear on screen in the game in a way that was so deeply moving that it will forever be possibly our magnum opus, our best thing we've ever been able to do or could ever do. So it's very impactful.
That's super impactful. I love it. And I highly recommend y'all go and check the video. There's a lot of really cool kind of Easter eggs and different directions that it goes. It's very delightful. And that moment, obviously, as you described it, is perfect. Pretty awesome stuff. So along those lines, how have TASBot fans reacted to what you've created here?
So first of all, extremely positively, in part because there were over 25 people that spent over 2.5 years working on this since the discovery of arbitrary code execution in the game Ocarina of Time. A large group of people have worked on it, but relatively in secret. Those 25 people didn't really talk about what was going on. So this was a huge surprise even to people inside of the TASBot community that I lead. A lot of people didn't know this was happening. So that response has been extraordinary. I think this is the thing that I can point back to and say, there really weren't any major mistakes. This was so amazing. So yeah, I can't even pick just one thing, but
yeah, that's awesome. Talk a little bit about the social impact of Here Together.
So, oh man, there's two things. First of all, there's a social impact of the run itself. To get it shown at Games Done Quick, Summer Games Done Quick, donors had to donate to reach a $225,000 goal, and they far surpassed that. There were T-shirt sales that had TASBot on it that also had $5 from every shirt going to Doctors Without Borders. That did extraordinarily well as well. At this point, I'm just so astounded at how much how many people just poured out their hearts and their wallets, for that matter, to Doctors Without Borders to make this run happen. So that part was socially very impactful. The Here Together part, as I touched on earlier, I think the real reason that it was so touching is because it was the culmination of an entire video. As you alluded to, we didn't just do Here Together. We started very small by showing beta elements in the cartridge, things like an R-Wing flying around. Inside of this US 1.0 original release cartridge is an R-Wing from Star Fox 64. It was just in the cartridge. The developers left it there. They probably used it to test a targeting system. But we start there, and then we start building in other beta content element while lacing in our own creativity. We created an entirely new boss battle where you get to actually beat the Running Man. You should watch this and understand the hilarity of that sentence when you see it. So there's so many different things that led up to that, but I'm not quite sure that was your question.
No. But I think you've done a good job illustrating just like how impactful this is for so many different reasons. Now, one thing that is of note is that there is a GitHub repository for the code. So, but I know not everybody's going to have that cute little robot behind you. But does that mean that anybody can recreate what they've seen in this video and what you showed off?
No, sadly, because I'll phrase it this way. I have an Infinite NES Lives board. This isn't an ad, but this is just a really cool device. This Infinite NES Lives retro device allowed me to basically dump the contents of my own cartridge. And that allowed me to then work with the rest of the team to develop all of the things that you saw. We incorporated Blender to do camera movements. We put all of that code on GitHub. So if you go to the GitHub repo that's linked from git-triforce.link, you can find this GitHub repo and you can get the assets that allowed us, or the tooling that allowed us to use Blender to create camera movements inside of Ocarina of Time. What we can't release is anything that touched Nintendo's property because we don't want to distribute content. And just a spoiler, we put another game inside of Ocarina of Time, effectively. Another Nintendo property. And as a result, all of that content we can't really distribute. So when you go to the GitHub, you might be sorely disappointed because we have it there. You could build it, but it just won't be complete. We would really love a way to release this, but we found that their lawyers don't have a real great sense of humor.
Yeah, you got to be really careful with that for sure, obviously. I think that's the smart move. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't at least ask about any sort of look towards the future. Obviously, it seems like you're always busy assigning TASBot a new task. Any possibility of sharing any details on what the next task might be? or directions
I
you're looking?
don't want to
anyways?
spoil it too much, but we'd like to do something that involves space. At a certain point, you just can't go up any farther. And we've reached that point. We're like, where can we go next? So the next idea is, well, can we go to space? So we're going to try to do something that incorporates a satellite. I'll leave it at that. If there are any folks from Hackasat that want to join us, feel free to get involved. We've already had some contact with some folks already. We would do this totally with the permission of NASA. We're not going to do anything silly, but hey, shoot for the moon. I'm not going to shoot the moon, but we're going to shoot for it.
No, please don't.
Now, having said that, if we're always looking for ideas, and the primary place where we all connect, if I may throw a little bit of a, hey, come join us. The primary place we connect is discord.gg/TASBot. If you look up TASBot on the Discord, in the Discord website, you'll find our community that's the center place where we do all of our development. We're always looking for new people to come in and give us ideas, work on projects. We don't need any particular skill. So many people that come in have total imposter syndrome because they can only do graphics, or they can only do sound, or they can only write things. And don't let that stop you. Come on in, join us. It's a very friendly community. We will gladly get you on board and have you help us with the new things that are happening next.
I love it. I love what you're doing, Allan, and I appreciate you taking time telling us all about it. And obviously, it's doing good for the world as well as just being really fun, geeky stuff. So, love it.
Yeah, this has now hit a level of, we have now raised over $1.3 million for various charities as a result of TASBot content over the course of the last 6-7 years. And really, it's a huge team of folks. It wasn't just me. I might have been the main presenter and the executive producer of the Triforce % run we showed, but man, I got to tell you, there are so many other people behind the scenes that make this happen. So this is just a great community that's done some really amazing things for charity, and I couldn't be happier with what we're doing.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for hopping on today. GetTriforce.link is probably the site that you can go to find out more information about what we've talked about. If people want to follow you online, where can they find you?
You can find me as DwangoAC, that's DWANGOAC, at YouTube, on Twitch, when I'm able to stream. But if you just look up TASBot, I am DwangoAC, keeper of TASBot, you'll definitely find me. And by far the best place to connect, just head on over to discord.gg/TASBot, and we'd love to have you.
There you go. Thank you, Allan. I'll see you soon in the neighborhood.
Thanks so much.
Take care, Allan. Bye. All right, up next, everything you ever wanted to know about the CHIPS Act, but we're afraid to ask Max Cherney from Protocol. I'm not afraid to ask Max about that, so that's coming up next. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV. It's about getting educated about the world of IT. Get the best possible IT training to accelerate your IT career from IT Pro TV, whose edutainers make learning engaging and fun on your own schedule. They've got virtual labs and practice tests, so you're always going to be supported and prepared for your exams. That's super important. And you can binge this content, right? 20 to 30-minute increments. It makes it very bingeable. They have more than 5,800 hours. That's 5,800 hours of IT training, always up to date with the most current content. And that is very important in the world of IT. It's a very fast-paced world, as you know. You can learn when and where you want. That's desktop, Apple TV, Roku, on your phone, wherever you happen to be. Or you can, hit the road with, you can even learn on your tablet. Shoot, if you have a tablet, go ahead and watch there. One reviewer says, best website to study IT and cybersecurity related courses. I like the part where they make a few courses free for a weekend. And that's true. They do that every month lately. They've been making some free content available for a weekend. For August, that's Getting Started in IT Free, the weekend of August 13th and 14th. And make sure not to miss that. That's some free content for you to check out what IT Pro TV is all about. They're also featuring a free live webinar, All Things Cybersecurity, with Ben Fink on Thursday, August 18th. That starts at 2 p.m. Eastern, so put that on your calendar, and you can check out past webinars on demand as well. New IT training courses and episodes are added daily. Today, you can step into the booming cloud world with IT Pro TV's AWS Cloud Practitioner Training. This course actually provides everything you need to pass your certification exam and get you on your way to a career in the cloud. And you can actually register at go.itpro.tv/AWS-cloud-practitioner. And don't forget about your IT team. If you have a team, check out IT Pro TV's business plan and get your team all set today. Visit itpro.tv/TNW. You'll get an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription. Make sure and use the code TNW30 to do that. That's itpro.tv/TNW and use code TNW30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. IT Pro TV is awesome. Check it out for yourself. Build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. And we thank IT Pro TV for their continued support of the TWiT Network and Tech News Weekly. All right, the chip industry is having a moment right now. Did you ever think you'd hear that? To celebrate, I've invited my new favorite chip industry guy to talk all about the CHIPS Act. You'll recognize him because he was on 2 weeks ago and is sacrificing yet another afternoon to be with us right now. Welcome back to the show, Max Cherney from Protocol.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Jason. I appreciate it.
It's good to see you. And yeah, we were kind of talking in email before. It's like suddenly, boom, chips are all the rage. You know, there's like news back-to-back weeks. I don't know if you expected it, but I feel like, you know, the chips have been in the news for a while now. And so I'm really happy to get you back here to talk a little bit about this news item that, yes, happened last week, but I feel like it's significant enough that we should probably shine a spotlight on it. The CHIPS Act well, you wrote about the CHIPS Act. This happened last week. President Biden, 2 years of congressional wrangling to make it happen. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I agree. Chips are having a bit of a moment right now. It's almost like they're really important and power everything.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, crazy, right?
Weird how that works.
So, yeah, the CHIPS Act, it got started in the first version of the bill, I believe, was introduced in the House in 2020. And it's just gone through a lot of a number of different versions. It's been attached to two pieces of legislation in the House and the Senate that it's sort of those pieces of legislation, the legislative vehicle sort of morphed into a gigantic spending package or a Christmas tree bill where everybody kind of hangs an amendment on it. And basically the Republicans and Democrats just couldn't agree on this massive spending bill. But I would say broadly, the interesting thing is broadly there is consensus among most Republicans and Democrats, aside from maybe the far left or right flank of either party, that this is a good idea. Basically, it just got bogged down in the political process. It's not a very exciting answer, but that's basically what happened.
Yeah. Okay. So then 2 years and it's just politics are slow is essentially why it's taken
basically.
that long.
I wish there was a more exciting answer for you, Jason, honestly, but that's it.
But now, okay, so we've gone 2 years, right? And there's been the 2 years of buildup, but then suddenly, and I don't know if that's just because it's in the moment, but suddenly things feel very urgent. Is this urgency, and maybe I'm just making that up, but it seems to me that there is urgency when it comes to chips. Everything is thrown upside down the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic and supply chain. We blame everything on the supply chain, things going on in China. Would you agree that there's urgency right now, that this is important timing for this?
Yeah, I mean, yes, with the caveat that this legislation isn't going to have an immediate effect. We're not going to suddenly be able to have all the chips we need tomorrow or next month or even next year. I mean, this is chip stuff in general is the timing is usually pretty long. And I think part of the urgency that you're talking about it's definitely real. But it's also politics because, I mean, basically it comes down to the fact that if the House and Senate didn't pass this particular law ahead of the August recess, there was just very little practical chance it was going to pass before the end of this year. And that would have meant it's going to move into the next Congress. And that just turns into a lot of unknowns. So I think there was a lot of, in the chip industry, but also among lawmakers, there was some interest in actually just getting this thing done because delaying it would have been another, again, 6 to maybe 6 months easily, maybe much longer than that.
Yeah. All right. So that's the boring politics side of the CHIP Act. Now let's talk a little bit about the fun and exciting things that it can actually lead to. What is it created to actually do? There's a lot of funds that are being appropriated as a result of this. Talk a little bit about the impact that it's expected to have, even if it's not immediate, even if it takes a little while. What does that look like?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, I just want to be clear. I mean, this is sort of a funny answer, but I just want to be clear that this amount of money, $52 billion for you and me, Jason, is a ton of cash, right?
That's true.
That's the total amount, and there's $24 billion in tax breaks that the industry is going to get as well. But for the chip industry, you got to think about that they make bets in like tens or hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's just one, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, for example, has said it's going to spend $100 billion on its factory expansion over 3 years. So this incentive bill, it's a small portion. That's not to say it's significant at all, right? I just want to also be clear about that, because $52 billion is a lot of money, and the way it's going to get divided up, roughly $40 billion is going to go directly to chip manufacturing, various subsidies around that. That's going to benefit companies like Intel probably the most, and that means they'll be able to. I mean, the idea is that they'll be able to build more chip factories in the U.S. I mean, that's the net of this thing. There's also $15 billion that's set aside to set up a national semiconductor center and a national packaging center. So this kind of stuff is actually it is important. It's going to have an impact. We're just not going to see it right away. And I mean, just by way of to illustrate this, I mean, the first funds aren't going to start going out until 2023. They're going to peak in roughly 2026 and then taper off in 2031. So do you see what I'm saying about the very long time horizon around there?
Yeah.
Not to say it is significant, but it's just going to take a little while.
And not only, I mean, those two things coupled together do kind of diminish a little bit this grand idea of this is going to change everything, because not only are you talking about an amount that on its face, you're right, to me, I look at that amount and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. But in the grand scope of the chip industry, it's minor. It's a sliver of the bigger picture of the greater pie. But then you've got that spread out over any number of years, and so it's not immediate impact of this small sliver. It's broadly spread over, lightly on a piece of toast. Why did I make this chip into a toast analogy? I don't know, but it makes sense to me. So maybe that diminishes it a little bit, but still a big deal. What does success look like then at the end of all this, when they look back on the CHIPS Act? What is the outcome that it's see, we were right. We did the right thing at the right time, and this is the thing that proves that.
Absolutely. I think it's a simple answer to this question, but I think it's actually a pretty good one. Congresswoman Anna Eshoo talked to me for a little bit about the bill and her interest in it. She represents some of Silicon Valley, which obviously is pretty important here. And she said, just very simply, more chips made in America. And I think that's the barometer of success. If we end up making twice the number of chips, 3 times the number of chips, whatever it is, right now I think the U.S. produces roughly just over 10%. I mean, if that number goes up to 15, 20% of the world's chips, if that actually happens, that's for sure a successful law, I think, for a lot of lawmakers.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And kind of along those lines, you also wrote about how the Biden administration plans to ban certain chips from being exported from China. And I imagine that means imported into the U.S. Which ones and why exactly?
Yeah. So just so I'm clear, the story is about the Biden administration's plan to block the export of certain software that's used to design incredibly advanced chips. Right.
Right.
So the chips that it focuses on are built with a technology called gate all around. And I don't want to get into all of this sort of stuff, but basically gate all around is seen widely in the industry as the next way to make chips more powerful and at the same time use less energy, which is basically everything for chip designers. And blocking the export, the design software needed to make these chips is incredibly important. You can't do this by hand anymore, obviously, right? There's incredibly sophisticated software that actually does the physical layout of the chips. It does the design testing to make sure that when you actually print the thing, it'll work. I mean, there's all sorts of stages to this. And gate-all-around technology requires sort of an update to the existing software because of the way that the transistors and gates work. So that's the plan, and it ties pretty closely, although not directly to the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act is kind of, I think people should think about it as kind of like a defensive play. It's the U.S. trying to improve its own manufacturing capabilities in sort of the longer run and be a more significant player. The export ban is kind of like an offensive play. The idea is to, and this is acceptable according to one of the people I talked to for the story, in international politics and economics, to trip your opponents. And that's what this is. Like if you're imagining a foot race, this is like the U.S. trying to trip China.
Interesting. And I guess it's easy for me to hop here, but I don't know if it makes any sense. Any direct correlation between, like, it's easy to see these two stories happening so soon, and especially, you live and breathe kind of the chip industry, so this might sound ridiculous, but is there any connection between kind of what's going on with the CHIPS Act and then also this kind of ban on the use of this software? Is this meant to kind of bolster the U.S. chip economy because of what's happening with the CHIPS Act, if that makes sense?
I mean, yeah, no, it definitely does. I mean, I think it's hard not to see those two things as connected, right? Because the whole part of the impetus behind the CHIPS Act is theoretically to it has to do with international relations, and we want to keep pace with the massive amount of spending that China is doing for its chip industry, and so on. And the export ban, it's not like directly it's not like the people who passed the CHIPS Act are ordering the Commerce Department to block the exports, right? Because obviously the executive branch, like the White House, does that, and Congress does its thing. But having said that, Biden has signaled support. Like, this obviously fits into the Biden administration's plan for how to sort of handle China and its semiconductor industry. And the ban on the software, the forthcoming ban on the software, is part of a few other strategies that the Biden administration has taken to block exports of other specific equipment needed to manufacture chips. So it's not, I mean, they're sort of, it appears as though they're taking an approach to pick up like little very specific things and prevent the Chinese from getting their hands on that type of technology. So I hope that answers your question. I mean, it's not like there's a one-to-one correlation, but this is definitely, if you're looking at it, this is part of the constellation of the sort of U.S. approach to China.
Yeah, no, I think that addresses it perfectly. That was kind of where I was trying to get to, and I couldn't quite word it the way, so eloquently the way you did. So I appreciate it, Max. Thank you so much for breaking this all down for us. Max Cherney, of course, writes for protocol.com. And if people want to follow your daily musings on the chip industry, where can they find you?
Twitter is the best spot. I'm at Chernandburn, so that's at CHERNANDBURN. And thanks again for having me, Jason. As always, it's been really fun. So I hope we can talk chips again soon.
Oh, we will. I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunity to do that. Thank you again, Max. We'll talk to you soon.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Coming up, comparing the new Pixel Buds Pro, which I wish I had in my hands right now. I don't. But comparing those to the AirPods Pro, because finally Google has kind of a direct comparison, a battle care of Phil Nickinson from Digital Trends. That's coming up next. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by ExpressVPN. You know what year it is. It's 2022. Every kid's device should have ExpressVPN installed. Why? Well, you wouldn't let your kids walk home from school without telling them to not talk to strangers, right? So why let them go online without using ExpressVPN? Why does every family need a VPN? Well, it's simple. Every device, phones, computers, tablets, they all have a unique IP address, which is like an internet phone number, right? It reveals personal information about you, even things like where you live. It's super simple for a stranger online to find your IP address. If you've ever clicked on a sketchy link, we've all done it accidentally, or open an email with a bugged image, that certainly happens. Well, your IP address could be exposed. That's actually why I use ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is an app that hides your real IP address, and then it replaces it with a dummy one, keeping you safe and private. And it's super easy to use. I've used VPN in the past that was not easy to use. ExpressVPN is the opposite of that. It's awesome. You just download the ExpressVPN app on your phone. You can also put that on your computer. Tap one single button to turn it on, and you're protected. And here's the coolest part about ExpressVPN. They let you choose what country you want your IP address to look like it's coming from. And that's really useful if you're using services like Netflix or like Disney Plus, because those services often give you different shows depending on what country you're in. So you can say, well, I'm connecting from Canada or Japan or whatever it is, and you end up getting like access to a different library that you don't normally see where you happen to live. Pretty awesome stuff. This has happened with Friends. I've used it with Friends in the past. There's the whole, and it's actually kind of fun to just fire it up and kind of browse to and, browse through and see things that appear that you didn't see before. I love ExpressVPN. It's awesome for any number of reasons, but primarily because it's fast. It doesn't slow you down. It's easy to use, and it keeps you protected, keeps me protected when I go into a coffee shop or some place where I'm on like public Wi-Fi. You better believe I'm firing up ExpressVPN. Secure your family's online activity and unlock tons of new shows by visiting expressvpn.com/TNW. Make sure and use our link, and you can get an extra 3 months free with a 1-year package. And I'll spell it out for you. EXPRESS, expressvpn.com/TNW. Check it out for yourself. Keep yourself safe. Find new shows on Netflix, protect your family, the whole gamut. expressvpn.com/TNW to learn more. And we thank them for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right, I'm super excited for this last interview because I haven't talked to Phil Nickinson in such a long time, so it's awesome to get the opportunity to do it. Google recently released its latest entry in the, I would say, crowded true wireless earbuds market, and that is the Pixel Buds Pro. I was hoping to have mine in hand before this interview, but alas, they have not delivered yet. And now, Phil Nickinson from Digital Trends did a comparison between the Pixel Buds Pro and Apple's AirPods Pro, and I think that's a comparison that a lot of people are going to be curious about. So here he is. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Hey, good to be back. Long time, man.
Yeah, it's been too long. It's really good to see you and have you on talking about this, because actually I've always been a fan of the Pixel Buds, even though I know they have their connectivity issues and whatever, but they tend to be the ones that I really reach for most of the time. Every once in a while I'll go for my Jabra Elites, but lately it's the Pixel Buds all the way. So I love them. Were you a fan of the originals or the A series? What were your thoughts?
I've gone back and forth for a long time. I haven't used the A series. I have the OGs, which Simon Cohen reminds me are actually the second generation Pixel Buds. The first generation were wired. I totally forgot about that. Oh, that's
right. Yes.
Yeah. They are, look, they're earbuds, okay? Google is not reinventing the wheel here, but what it is really doing is adding some much needed features that have been missing for a while, that weren't there in the A series, and that a lot of people are adding, and it was Google's turn to do it.
Yeah, indeed. So how exactly do these new model, or the new model, which, by the way, before we move on, I saw, my eyes caught your leather case for the Pixel Buds. That looked really, really nice. I got to get me one of those. But how do these new ones put the Pro in Pixel Buds? What's so pro about them?
I really think the word pro comes down to noise cancellation. It's that simple. Okay. And that's what has been missing in the past. They've done passive noise cancellation. Now we have active noise cancellation, which is where the microphones in the earbuds themselves, which I'm wearing right now, will suck in the ambient sound and spit it back to you to cancel everything out. And, generally speaking, they all do it the same way, right? But Apple will tune things a little differently than Google will, than any of the other companies. So yeah, everything's a little different. These are earbuds, though, so that at the end of the day, it really comes down to personal preference. And that's where it's tricky with earbuds, right? I have a hard time describing to you, my ears versus your ears. Sure. Everything is going to be a little different to everybody. The real basic high level, thing is these are really close to the AirPods Pro. They're really, really close. They fit different. They feel different. They sound a little different. That's not to say bad. That's not to say the noise cancellation is worse. It's just a little different. I found that these let in a little more high frequencies. I can hear things with these, even when noise cancellation is turned on like it is right now, that I can't hear with the AirPods Pro. Maybe that's due to the fit. Maybe the ear tips are just a little different. Yeah. These feel like they're sitting a little higher, a little more outside than the AirPods Pro do. So if you don't like that feeling of something down in your ear, and not that either of them are really in your ear canal, but these just feel lighter. They haven't felt like they're going to fall out yet. I've been wearing these to the gym almost every day since I've had them. I switched back to the AirPods Pro a couple times just to get that comparison. I enjoy this feel a little bit more at the gym. I enjoy, as much as I really enjoy like the feeling of being in I can't say it today, anechoic chamber and having that vacuum in my head. There are times you want that. The gym isn't one of those times for me. I need to hear when, a weight goes flying off somebody's bar and it's coming at my head, right? I want to have a little bit of situational awareness. On an airplane, it's a different story. And I haven't gotten to wear these on a plane yet, though I do live next to an airport, and I can tell you the ANC does a really good job of canceling out the noise of an airplane taking off. So the long story short is Google's done a really, really good job with these. And I think the big question you have to ask yourself is actually a simple one. Are you using Android or are you using iOS? If you're using iOS, you're going to get more out of the AirPods Pro that you wouldn't get out of the Pixel Buds Pro. But that said, I've been using these with an iPhone every day. So new Phil is using all different platforms now.
Well, I mean, so I've only, put a pair of AirPods in, and they weren't these like the ceiling kind of pro versions of the AirPods in my ear. They were more the ones that kind of rest in there. And I'm just generally, I'm not a huge fan of that style. So I haven't had a whole lot of AirPod experience, but I'm pretty certain that Apple has certain features that work with their AirPods that those AirPods aren't going to have those same features if they're on Android. Is the opposite true? Are there features that the Pixel Buds afford to Android users that Apple users don't get to enjoy?
Yeah, there's a specific Pixel Buds app that you can get on Android, and that opens up a few little settings, not a big deal. I think the real reason to consider it, though, is you have to have that Pixel Buds app if you want to upgrade the firmware. So if updates are a big thing for you, and for these earbuds, that's going to be, you're going to need to have access at least for a little while to an Android device of some kind, because that's the only way to update the firmware. And you're going to need a firmware update at some point to turn on spatial audio for these. That's the big feature that's missing. Google has said it's coming. We don't know when. I can't remember if they said later this year, just said later. Whatever. I don't count any of that until like it actually happens. So that's something that AirPods Pro have right now that these do not. I can take or leave. Spatial audio isn't a huge deal for me. That's where Apple works with Dolby Atmos to, instead of just left, right, you're going to have sounds coming from all different directions, and they split up the tracks even further. So you can have, one guitar here and one guitar in front of you and above, and really cool. But like, that's not a must-have feature for me when I'm listening to music. Yeah. And there are times where it's really neat, Rolling Stones, Guns N' Roses, stuff like that, where you have two dedicated guitar. It's where the music nerds in us is going to come out right now, right? And there are other times where it just doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. No, spatial audio is something that I've sampled a couple of times and never find myself like, I've got to now listen to that album in spatial audio. Like, it's never quite caught me. But I do find that pretty peculiar that if you are an iOS user and you have the Pixel Buds Pro and they don't offer spatial audio yet, which is a feature that, I think iOS users are more used to using, or maybe this is just my assumption, but more used to using because Apple has offered it for a while now than maybe Android users are. You don't see as much of that, even though it is supported on certain Android devices. I don't see that called out as much, but I find it peculiar that, these earbuds on iOS will someday get the support for spatial audio, which is something you probably want to use on your iOS device. But yet, if you have an iOS device, there's no way to update them to get that feature. That seems like a real miss.
It's one of those times where I could see, like, I come from the Android world. I know when people say one thing and something else ends up happening. I would hold off on saying, yes, you're going to have great spatial audio with these on iOS. I just don't know. It's one of those things. I could see somebody doing something really weird and it just doesn't happen because somebody said somewhere, hey, let's only put spatial audio on Android. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. Don't misquote me here. But I'm going to hold off on that. Spatial audio is not a reason to buy these right now. I think the real reason to buy these right now is A, they're $50 cheaper than AirPods Pro. B, you're going to get extra specs on Android than you would somewhere else. C, if you love the Google ecosystem, great, awesome. These are really good within that. D, they sound good. They feel good. That's D and E. F, I'm trying to find a way to compare them to toast. Can we work that metaphor into this section at all?
They're buttery smooth. No, I don't know.
There you go. Yeah, no,
I'm reaching into my archive of Android acronyms and terminology, and buttery smooth was there somewhere. So
if you forced me to choose and say, Phil, which one is better? Which one is absolutely better than the other? I will say AirPods Pro are slightly better, not a lot. Okay. I don't know if it's a $50 difference better. I don't know that it's a deal with with a Google, earbud on an iOS device, which isn't to say you have to do anything. It's just you're missing some features. So I think if you can stay within the ecosystem, you're going to get a little more out of these, with Android than you will iOS. But they are, by no means bad. And that price difference, especially when you consider at some point they'll probably go on sale, that's going to help a lot.
Yeah. I'm like scrambling to see what the Pixel Buds typically have been as far as repairability, because we actually had an interview at the top of this show with Geoffrey Fowler from the Washington Post, who was talking about, just the fact that so many of our devices have an early death date because the battery inside is fixed in so solidly, and that basically when that battery is deteriorated, all you can really do is throw away the device, and called out the AirPods as a big kind of a big example of that happening. I wonder if there's some repairability with the Pixel Buds Pro, and I don't know that iFixit even has that teardown yet. I'm kind of scrambling to look for it right now, but
yeah, they might not. There's actually a company out of South Florida, I believe it's called PodSwap, that does they basically refurb AirPods and will sell you back pretty cheap. I've done it a couple times, and it's been a little hit and miss, but that's just kind of a testament to the Apple ecosystem and how you get those second and third order effects that Google stuff just doesn't get yet. It's gotten better over the years, for sure.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's super, super important to point that out. Okay, cool. So, but it sounds like your desert island pick, if you had to choose between one of these, it sounds like it's AirPods Pro, but slightly.
And again, my first question back to you is going to be, well, what phone are you taking with you?
Yeah, that's probably most important.
If you're taking an iPhone, go with the AirPods Pro. If you're taking an Android phone, by all means, take these.
Yeah, right on. Cool. Well, I can't wait to get mine. Like I said, I'm hoping to get the delivery today, and you better believe I'm going to use them because I've used the A series. I've used the series before. The only version of the Pixel Buds that I have not had is the wired one, the original one that you were talking about. Those never made a whole lot of sense to me. But so I'm looking forward to it, and even more so now after talking with you. Always great to get a chance to talk with you, man. Thank you so much for coming on today,
Phil.
Digitaltrends.com. If people want to follow your work and your daily musings online, where can they find you?
I am Phil Nickinson on all the things. Not Phil Mickelson. He's been in the news a little bit lately, and I've been getting tagged. Phil Nickinson.
Be careful. I can imagine. That's probably followed you for a good amount of time online.
Yep.
Right on. Well, thank you, Phil. Appreciate it. We'll talk with you soon.
Thank you, guys. See you.
All right. Bye. All right. Jam-packed show. Thank you so much for watching and listening each and every week. I'm looking forward to having Micah back in the seat next week as well. Have a couple of interviews, do our stories of the week. This week, obviously, I kind of pushed the stories of the week aside in favor of more interviews, which is always fun to kind of change things up a little bit. So great stuff. TNW Tech News Weekly publishes every Thursday. So if you go to twit.tv/TNW, you'll find everything you need to know about subscribing to the show in audio or video formats. You can jump out to YouTube and subscribe there if that's your favorite place to watch and listen. If you want all of our shows ad-free, that is no ads in our content at all, you can check out Club Twit. That's $7 a month. Gets you every Twit show with no ads, like I said, an exclusive Twit Plus podcast feed, which actually has extra content. We're always throwing new content in there. Ant Pruitt is the community manager, and he's running that so well. I mean, just all sort, there's just like Stacy's Book Club and Hands on Windows just launched on there. There's all this content that you don't get outside of the club. So check it out for that reason. And then finally, you get access to members only Discord channel, which is just a ton of fun as well. twit.tv/clubtwit. Also, just so you know, you can subscribe to individual shows if you're on Apple Podcasts, $2.99 a month. You can say, hey, this is the one show that I want with no ads. And you can do that, $2.99 as well. The ad feed completely ad-free. There you go. That's one other way to do it. But as for me, I'm at Jason Howell on Twitter, so you can find me there. I also do All About Android, and let me tell you, you want to watch All About Android next week, next Tuesday. I can't tell you why, but we've got some really cool stuff planned for that. twit.tv/AAA. Big thanks to John Ashley at the studio for doing all of his live magic during the show, for doing the post-show production stuff. Really couldn't do it without you, John. Also, big thanks to Burke for all the testing that he has to undergo heading into each episode of Tech News Weekly every week. And thanks to you for watching and listening. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and I am the host of Hands on Photography here on TWiT TV. I know you got yourself a fancy smartphone, you got yourself a fancy camera, but your pictures are still lacking. Can't quite figure out what the heck shutter speed means? Watch my show. I got you covered. Want to know more about just the ISO and exposure triangle in general? Yeah, I got you covered. Or if you got all of that down, you want to get into lighting, making things look better by changing the lights around you. I got you covered on that too. So check us out each and every Thursday here on the network. Go to twit.tv/hop and subscribe today.